Hi, I'm Andrew Wasson. Thanks for joining me for my weekly guitar blog. It's October 20th, 2013, and this week we're going to get into learning 80s Rock-Riff Harmony. And this question was sent in from Raymond. He's in Highland, Indiana, and he wrote in with this email question. I'd classify myself as an intermediate guitarist learning how to play 80s power chord rock. I like that sound of classic rock bands from the 1980s a lot. But bands like Ratt, Tesla, and Quiet Riot seem to have other chords in their songs. These are a lot like power chords, but yet different. It's like they use major and minor chords, but with an open, ringing sound. How do they do this? From Raymond in Highland, Indiana, USA. Well, thanks for writing in, Raymond. You know, those bands from the 1980s were chock full of great guitar players. Guys like George Lynch from Dokken and Warren Demartini from Ratt could not only shred the neck to pieces, but they were also killer rhythm players, embellishing all kinds of interesting two-note chord concepts around those common power chord shapes. Now, the shapes that were most often used were small, major or minor two-note chords, and they were simply mixed in with the use of standard power chords. So the final end result was a progression that slurred the punchy power chord concept along with the more harmonic double stop major and minor sound. And this gave the progressions a very interesting scalar sound that allowed for rapid harmony movement along the neck. So let's zoom in on the fretboard and apply some of these classic 80s rock guitar harmony ideas. Well, let's start with a few of the most popular approaches to this sound, and that would be the use of power chords along with two-note double stop major and minor intervals, all applied in the first example under a lower string drone of E open, 6-string open, floating above chords that I'm going to produce off of the 5th and 4th guitar strings under that. Now, this uses an E minor key center. We're going to start with an E power chord, and then we're going to go over to an E minor two-note double stop, using the 3rd finger and index finger off of 5th to 4th strings. Then we're going to come around to a D power chord, have an E minor melody line next, head over to a C power chord, and then do a C major double stop to a D major double stop with another E minor scale run on top to wrap up the progression and take us back to the beginning. So the whole progression is going to sound like this. And I'm just going to hit some distortion, give you a chance to hear the sound of this with some overdrive. All right, in my second example, I'm going to shift over to the key of A minor. I'm going to apply another lower drone of open 5th string A. For this example, I'll be using power chords built off of the two-note intervals from the 5th and the 4th strings, as well as the 4th and the 3rd strings, too. And one other interesting idea in this example is the use of inverted power chords, which are actually also referred to as 4th intervals. And if you're not familiar with them, they take the name and the function of the power chord that they're related to through an inversion process. So let's take a look at a typical A power chord built from the 6th string, 5th fret. The notes are A over to an E, the root in the 5th of the scale, and then what we're going to do is we're going to invert that, putting E over to A from 5th string to 4th string, and now we have an inverted power chord or a 4th interval from the 5th string to the 4th string, E to A. Takes on the color of the power chord that it's related to, though. So if you're using an E 4th or an E inverted power chord, that's really the same effect, harmonically, as an A power chord. Now in this riff, the A power chord is going to start things off from the open position, and we're going to head up the neck, going into a C inverted power chord and a D inverted power chord. And then we're going to have a G and an A minor as major and minor interval ideas from 4th and 3rd strings. Then we're going to head into a C power chord, and then we're going to do something very interesting next. We're going to have a B augmented interval here. We're going from B, in this case, over to this G note. And the idea is that we're basically heading from the interval of typical power chord B, and we're taking the 5th and raising it. And now we have like F double sharp, or you could call it G. And the idea that happens here is we have a lot more pull back to the root chord of the progression. So now our drop down is going from the C to the B augmented to the A. And you can hear that nice drop down. So whatever key you're in, just go up a whole step, play the augmented, and that'll resolve you very nicely to the root of the key that you're in. Now in the third measure of this progression, we're just doing the same riff that we had from the first measure. And then in the final measure, the fourth measure, we're going to start it kind of the same as second measure, but our resolution is going to use a F power chord and G power chord built off the fourth guitar string. So here's how the whole progression comes together. Now I'm just going to add on a little bit of distortion, give you a chance to hear what this sounds like. All right, next I'd like to shift up to another string and get some open D string going on, open D fourth. This time around I wanted to take things past the basic major and minor harmony direction and add in some extensions and suspended chords of both of the types, the second and the fourth suspensions. And one idea that I added is the addition of a major seventh interval against the low D. It's a very cool sound, really popular with that 80s hard rock guitar sound. So basically the riff is going to begin up high here from a D major chord, and then it's going to apply that suspended fourth. Then I added the major seventh and the extension of the sixth, dropping down into that sixth, and then we have a D6 suspended into the D major 7 once again, and then another D6 idea, or D5, pardon me, D power chord. So that first two measures goes. Then we're going to start once more back at the D major sound, and then we're going to have the sus4 come back, D major 7, down into the D6. So that third measure is just like first. And then we're going to have the D6 suspended second come in with a D6 suspended fourth into more of an A two-note interval sound. So here's how this entire progression comes together. I'm going to pop some distortion on there now, give you a chance to sound like, hear what that sounds like. All right, in my next example, I decided to go in another direction into the sounds of the 80s rock ballad approach. Now, in this example, I wanted to demonstrate how both the power chords as well as the suspended chords can be expanded into rather large shapes that apply a good number of open strings. Now, in this demonstration of these classic 80s rock ballad sounds, I think you're not just going to find it fun to play, but it's really interesting to learn the application of a lot of these open string style power chords and also suspended chords. So here's how it goes. We just pedal through a rather large E power chord here. We're using a lot of open strings. And then we're going to head to a D suspended second sound, then to a C sus2, and then A sus2. It's a really cool open sound. If you put lots of reverb and a little bit of chorus, so you can even try flanger and some other effects, it's going to sound very cool. But here's the whole progression for you. The underlying chord harmony of these 80s rock progressions formulates the rhythm riffs around notes that are justified from the chords of the song's key center. It's almost a little bit along the same lines that a bass player might use to build a bass riff. There's a harmonic opinion formed by the musician where the riff is describing an underlying chord, and in this style of rock, we'll often find a drone note floating under our changes, suggesting several harmonies underneath the lower pedal tone. And knowing the characteristic harmonic structures contained within the key of a progression will be a huge asset when creating your own riffs within this style. Now, one thing's for sure, these riffs are a lot of fun to play, and when you put on a crunchy, overdriven guitar sound, you're going to have a lot of fun jamming out to this stuff. Anyway, that's about all the time I have for today. As always, thanks for watching. Have yourself a great week, and I'll catch up with you next time. Bye for now.